I'm Michelle,
And I'm Catherine,
and we're here at the Healthy Hurried Human podcast,
where we talk about keeping pace in a world that never slows down. Welcome back to the Healthy Hurried Human podcast.
So, Catherine, I have a question for you.
Oh, okay, great. We are talking about questions today.
So, why do elevator jokes, why are they so classic and so good?
Why? Why are they so good, Michelle?
Because they work on many levels.
No, that's fantastic.
Hey, come on. I thought I needed to ask you a question in a very lighthearted way to get us started on empowering questions.
This is a great topic because I remember when we were first when I first was introduced to the wheel and you said empowering questions, I was all, oh, I know what they are. I've got great empowering questions. And then I rolled them out and you were like, okay, so those are very good questions to ask yourself, not an empowering question.
That's right.
And I was like, oh, so because I had assumed an empowering question was something that an individual came up with for themselves to give them really a pause or to make them reflective over what
Creating
they were
a
doing.
moment.
Creating a moment.
Yes. You know, I'm a big fan of questions, built a whole career on it. I like to call empowering questions a practice. The way you would practice yoga or stretching, you practice this, you know, regularly in situations, whether it's a heavy situation, a minor situation, it's empowering questions are a very strong practice. It's a practice that creates a different perspective on an unchanging circumstance or situation. And the purpose is to bring clarity, not necessarily solutions. So often people are trying to ask a question to create a solution. But this practice, the purpose is really just to kind of get you in a place of, I need clarity and maybe a different perspective.
It is such a different approach to where I think of when I think of an empowering question.
Right.
And it ties in, does it tie into the practice of, is there another way to look at the situation? It's different.
It's different, but I would say they hold hands. That's one of the things I have it on the wheel because, you know, look, I wouldn't have a wheel. I would have a ball of like rubber bands. If I put every tool, every practice that you can incorporate to help you move forward, right? There's just so many out there. But this one is on a wheel. It has its own spoke. It is part of the wheel because this one practice literally gives function to all the other spokes on my wheel. It causes us to function better in every other spoke of the wheel that we've been talking about. It helps the function of those. When we bring in empowering questions, it will cause us to be able to look at whatever spoke we're on, whether it's, you know, healthy inner circle, you know, positive self-growth, emotionally grounded. When we bring empowering question, is that one practice or tool that is going to kind of beef up the legitimacy and the oomph of whatever you're trying to accomplish or wherever you're trying to move forward. Because when we ask empowering questions at the right time and in the right place, which is usually just when we're lacking clarity. So I don't want to make it sound like, well, geez, is there a formula of when to ask and how to ask? Like, no, it's just, hey, I'm needing some clarity here. So how I need to ask myself something that's going to cause me to look at it differently.
So again, when you're practicing the appraisal situation of running the wheel and you realize, hey, I need what I'm lacking is clarity. Because honestly, my mind is running with different scenarios in the workspace or not just personal life, but in the workspace where doing empowering questions is vital, especially if you're working on a team or team project.
So I felt like when you and I were talking about incorporating this, because it's one of the wheel spokes, that the best way to go at this one is to do it a little differently than our normal format. And just to dive into, I'm going to give you some of my top examples. These are some of my favorite empowering questions to ask in any given situation. But several of these, I've kind of put them in the what word am I looking for? Of work. Context of work. There's that word. So the first one I like to do, and I use this one personally a lot, is what if? And you're just asking yourself, this one often helps us generate motivation. We'll talk about this, I hope, in another episode, but because I like to talk about motivation. Most people think motivation, they're waiting for it. It's going to land on them. We're going to go grab it out of a tree. You know, it's like, it's just this thing that happens, and it's not. We have to generate it like a powerhouse. We have to generate motivation. So what if helps generate motivation, or helps us get over an obstacle, or the thing our brain can't quite help us get into. So I've got 5 things on my to-do list. So whether you're at home or you're at work, you've got 5 things, and you're not really motivated to do any of them. But you say to yourself, what if I spend 5 minutes, I'm going to set a timer, and I accomplish number 1 or a number 4, I pick one of those tasks. What if I just do that? And your brain says, instead of your brain going, no, stop, I don't want to, your brain goes, I'm curious about that. Let's just see. But you're going to set the timer, and you set the timer, and all of a sudden you realize you've knocked it out. Or I know this has happened to all of us. You finish it and you think, why did I resist that? Because that took me 10 minutes. But in my head, I'd blown it up to 2 hours or 4 hours or half a day, So that's happened to all of us. And what if, that's why that's probably, I made it first because I'm like, that's my favorite. I love the what if. It has helped me out of a lot of procrastination situations.
When you talk about that one, I think about like how popular I'm seeing ADHD conversations or dopamine hit conversations, or that brain pulling us back into the comfort zone. It'll be more comfortable, or I'll put it off tomorrow, or, I'm overwhelmed by all the tasks. But what you're describing is if you can pull yourself out of it and put a time limit also on things, then they do not seem as overwhelming, because they could bloom into something that seems there are just too many things to do. So is that one always based on time organization, the what ifs, or?
No, it usually I go to what if practice when I'm feeling resistant. I just don't want to do this. So whether it's I'm procrastinating, whether it's a time management, whether it's I'm just not feeling motivated, it's when I'm just not really wanting to do it, but it really needs to get done. So I use the what if, and it's empowering because it gives me a completely different clarity viewpoint of it by saying, I used it with my kids when they were little. Hey, what if we spend 5 minutes? I'll turn on the timer and we just spend 5 minutes cleaning up the toys. It just doesn't seem as daunting. It puts a different this isn't all day, or it's not going to take a long, it just, when the brain knows that you are kind of dangling a carrot of reward of a timer going off, or changing the question of, what if I just do this for this long? Okay, no big deal. All right, let's do it. It just gives you a different clarity of it. Another one that I like to go to is, lots of people probably know this one, is what can I control? Oh, yeah. And this is more for an emotional situation. When our emotions are involved, we can feel out of control, or we can feel like I have to control everything.
Or if someone's bringing emotion to the space, or the conference room, or the project that you're working on, or the room that you're in.
Yeah. What can I control is just, it's a good, it shuts the noise out and kind of brings you to center and saying, what do I have here that I can, that I have control over? So the next one, we're gonna peel it back because it really works for this. It's the 3 to 5 whys. Asking why 3 is generally the least amount you can do it to peel this onion. 5 to 7. I heard recently that Toyota created this. I don't know if that's true or if they were just the first ones to bring somebody in to talk about it. So I want to make sure everyone knows that I did not create this. This is one that I've adopted. And it's where you are in a situation or you are in a predicament or whatever it is. And this is a very good one for managers of people. Before you respond to your team or to an individual, you practice the whys, multiple whys, 5 whys, 7 whys, whatever you want to call it. And let's give a scenario how you practice this. I call it peeling. If you've ever cut an onion, there's layers upon layers upon layers, and you could literally peel an onion down to the very center. And so that's what the multiple whys question is we're trying to get down to the very center. So we have a scenario where you as a manager are wondering why your team is delayed in an important project. They're very delayed. And human nature, oftentimes, especially if we've got somebody breathing down our neck or putting pressure on us, and then we are reliant on other people to perform, human nature is to go to the worst of what we believe about human. Oh, they're lazy. They're just not getting their work done. We go there. That's a flaw of us as human beings. They haven't tried.
This isn't important to them.
Mm-hmm. And so this is where emotional regulation comes in. And a manager who is practicing emotional regulation, trying to lead with integrity and compassion, says, you know what? I really want to go there. I just want to be really upset with them because I'm getting pressure. Says, you know what though? Let me think through this, or let me pull somebody from the team in. And they start with hey, why is this behind schedule? And that person says, because we haven't gotten critical data from Department C. The next question is, why aren't we getting, because then you could start being frustrated all over again at Department C. But then you say, what's going on with Department C? Well, they are waiting on some key components because they can't get us that data. Why not? Because they are short-staffed. Why? Are people calling out? Are people not doing their work? We go again, we are tempted to go to the worst part of human nature kind of place, right? But if we continue to ask the questions, we find out, well, Department C has had some major budget cuts. They're short-staffed. They're short-staffed is meaning that critical components aren't being delivered. So we're doing the reverse engineering. And then we have this conversation. I'm simplifying it, in the workplace. But that's how we demonstrate, and we're doing what we've promised everybody in a few episodes where we're like, we're going to dig into this a little bit more. That's where we're practicing emotional regulation as an influencer, as a manager of people, in caring for people responsibly with compassion and leadership and integrity.
So let's take that analogy of the project is derailed or not able, because that is a significant, significant time you might not be able to, you're not meeting your schedule, could have detrimental effects. Let's say we go all the way to the back and we find out why. How does that help you know why it's there? Is it just a chain of blame so that you're not blaming your project manager, you're not frustrated with your project manager, because it's still not going to get the project back on schedule?
Well, but then that's where I think you use what's in your control then. What can you control? You can't control the fact that they're not over Department C. And yes, it sort of can, similar, whatever, use it, all those words of a blame, but it's not blame if it's an explanation. And sometimes we need explanation to understand, okay, this project's either going to be really delayed. What can I control? We need to let whoever owns this project, they need to be involved. It starts to open up, hey, this is going to be either fixable or we're going to have to live with it.
Or we're going to have to, of course, my mind's stuck in a very specific analogy that you've given of, what can I control? How do I communicate? Now that, because I think the key for me is now that I really know what's going on, I know I can choose what I communicate next.
That's right.
Because if you're going to have to change the schedule, if you're going to have to go, you've got the facts. It's not emotional. It's not, where the breakdown has happened.
Well, and remember, we're not asking those questions to solve the problem.
Oh, right. See, sorry.
It's not the empowering question when we do the whys isn't to solve it. It's to bring clarity. And that is the only purpose of empowering questions, is we just want to bring clarity so that then we know, okay, those charts that people make that they ask you a question and they say yes, and then align.
The flow charts.
No, go this way. Is that a flow chart?
Flow chart.
Okay, so it's basically creating a flow chart for you. And okay, now I needed the clarity, so now I know where to go in my flow chart of decision making and management skills and interacting with people. It's just bringing clarity. So we're not trying to solve it, but it probably is going to lead you to the next steps to get to a place of solving it or fixing your problem.
I really find these questions have been like doing the 3 whys, asking the 3 whys. Haven't used it as much in the business setting as I've used it in the relational setting.
Yeah.
And we have a party that we've got to attend, and I don't want to go, and I'm dragging my heels, and I'm showing up late. Why? Why am I dragging my heels? Like, I love all the people that are going to be there. And that questioning line gets down to the root of the problem of either a confrontation that had happened or a previous experience. It gets all the way down to the bottom layer. Just asking the self the why has gotten to the point of, I really do not feel welcome.
Okay.
At that place. And every time I go, I have to exert a ridiculous amount of energy to convince myself to go and show up. And as an extrovert,
that's surprising.
It is surprising, but also I always want to go to all the parties.
Right.
And so when I don't want to go to a party, why not?
Let's get to the bottom of
that. And
it's
been very freeing to be able to say, guess what? You don't have to go to all the parties.
That's right.
But that's just a very specific example, but
or it could be, hey, I think I might have something I need to repair.
Or I've walked into a temperamental situation where there were emotions were sparking all over the place.
Right.
And trying not to be obnoxious with the whys, but just say, but why? And there have been tears at the end of it when they get to the root cause. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times these stronger, aggressive emotions are hiding something where there's been a wound or something very sensitive or something very personal to that. So for me, I've used this more, the 3 whys, more in a one-on-one situation.
I think the 3 whys work. It's funny, as we're talking through this, I don't know that I've ever thought this before, but I'm realizing each of the ones I made examples of, they kind of connect to a certain emotion or a certain specific scenario. The 3 whys for me, especially when I'm doing, consulting, is usually best with anger. When somebody's frustrated or angry, I think we think that's not what we want to hear. Why are you angry? We think that's probably the worst thing, but for ourselves or with the person that's angry is helping them because anger is always the top emotion. That's the topsoil. It is not the root. It is fear, it's mistrust, it's rejection, it's something deeper. And when we use the 3 whys, it helps us get to that. And it tends to, I can't make promises, but it tends to dissipate the anger because you get down to the real thing that's driving it. So you bringing that up is kind of bringing clarity for me that, these are kind of attached to different emotions or specific scenarios, like, the one, what if, is connected to lack of motivation or procrastination. Another empowering question that I like is, what's the narrative right now? What's the narrative right now? Again, it's not to solve the problem, but being in a place where, and when I say narrative, is there's a few ways you can apply that. So the narrative in my mind, what is the thing, because we talk about thoughts lead to emotions, emotions lead to actions. What is the thought process? What are you thinking right now? What am I hearing? What voices am I hearing? What are they hearing? What's the narrative in the room? Like, that's just a good, let's get clear. Because if we can hear the narrative, it's either right or it's wrong. Let's see.
I have an example of the how is my energy and what energy do I want to bring from the owners meeting experience that I had.
Yes.
Do you want me to tell that story or?
Yes.
Okay. So I was in a situation where we do a big meeting. My former company was an employee-owned company, and we had started a meeting where we would bring all of the employee owners in. And it was once a year, and it was a big to-do, and it was my baby, and I absolutely loved this thing. And every year it got bigger because we had more owners, and the company was growing, and our shares were doing well, and it was becoming a bigger and bigger celebration. And for the first year, we were going to do it out of town. And I had been moved to a different position within the company. There were a bunch of stars all aligned all at the same time that gave me 6 weeks of starting a new position and executing a project, executing the event, when the CEO came to me and said, I might want to roll out a new initiative at your event. So it was a lot. And we had a new president, and I started to spin out.
Spiral out, yeah.
And the CFO looked at the president one day and joked, and he goes, oh, you've never watched Catherine execute one of these. He goes, just buckle up. It's hilarious. Because I'll run a mile a minute.
Yeah.
And they kept saying words to me like, Catherine, this event that your team, because it wasn't just me, it was a whole team of people were putting this on. Your team of people that, you got leading this. You got this. You great. It always does great. I kept trying to say to them, I'm not going to be able to execute it well this year because the factors have changed. There's time constraints are different. I'm not going to be able to have this great event.
Yeah, you felt like you were drowning.
And they kept saying, what I heard them say was, we're not going to give you any extra support. We don't really believe you. We're not going to listen to you because
you're fine.
You're fine. You
right.
always do a great job. And I woke one night, I couldn't sleep, and I got up and just was writing and journaling all of my thoughts and feelings. And I got to the point where I realized I'm the only one doubting that we're going to be able to pull it off. And got to a point where I said in my journaling notes, what do I want the experience to be for everyone who walks in that door? And I literally said, I want them to, never let them see us sweat. The people at corporate were seeing me schwitz a lot. And I was like, actually, I want them to show up and walk in. I want to give everybody who attends this event a sense of relaxation. I want them to have joy when they come in. I want them to enjoy it. My flower budget got cut. So I called a friend of mine at the last minute, said the florist canceled on me, and there are all these different things. And I was like, what I want is I want people to come in and sit down and have a beautiful meal and everything be great and visually be great and match the invitations and look at all the pretty things and the great execution of all the things that were taking place in it. And I want them to not feel the stress, because there was another part of me that really wanted someone to acknowledge all the hard work we were putting into it.
Of course.
And once that ego got set aside, and I focused on really what energy I wanted to bring.
Yes.
It changed everything.
God gave you the clarity you needed.
God bless my team, who I had been about. And when they showed up in town, I took them out we were in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Shout out to Clumpy's Ice Cream. At 11:30, we had a meeting at Clumpy's Ice Cream because I love Clumpy's. We went out to ice cream. We went back to the hotel suite. We were dividing everything. I wanted to show up better for them than to be a frazzled spinner. And once I realized what energy I wanted to bring, then I just said, if it gave me almost like a release to just let things happen and unfold the way that they would. And I hadn't really correlated, I guess I had before, but hadn't really correlated how the difference in me feeling the tension internally and then being like, you know what? She canceled the flowers. We'll just get white
We'll figure it
hydrangeas,
out.
cut it out $5 from, or like these little cute, like all of a sudden, what we wanted to feel and what I wanted everyone else to feel made just, I'm losing my words here, changed the entire way of how I showed up.
It gave you the clarity of what was important, what the priority was, of why you were even doing all of this.
And when these grown men would say to me, we're just going to move the centerpiece if we can't see over it. And I was horrified. But what they were saying was, what is important is us communicating across the table.
Across the table.
So if we start at what the baseline is of what has to happen, then everything else is just fluff. And the piece de la resistance for me was the berries they put on top of the cheesecake. That was the dessert, matched the color scheme perfectly. Everything came together perfectly, even things I didn't even put forth effort for.
Right.
And nobody moved the centerpieces.
And I feel like that's how it tends to happen when we release. I feel like, I kind of hate this phrase, but I don't, where people are like, the universe kind of brings it back to you, because I don't know I don't know if I think it's that, but it's like we're releasing that power and energy of like, I have to control it or it's not going to work out. When we release it, it allows for this openness to see what is amazing and beautiful and how it works together. So just to be clear, that you're talking about, we're going to end on this last empowering question, which is, what's the energy that I'm bringing? Mm-hmm. And hopefully it's what you want to bring, but if not, that should bring clarity of, which is what you did, which is, this isn't the energy I want to bring. I want to bring this. So then I'm going to get in alignment with the energy I want to bring. Mm-hmm. And that's really important in the workplace because, and I think we've talked about this with you before, where, in that job, by the way, we love to work with ESOPs, just going to say that, employee stock owned companies. But you would say, what do I want to bring to the everyday work? And that's why you did little things that people kind of don't notice, but then notice because it makes them feel good. It's important in the workplace to constantly, whether you are a manager or in charge of people, I don't want to say just because I think we're all important, but if you don't have responsibility over other people, you have responsibility over the energy you bring to your job. Mm-hmm. And we all can think of stories of walking into, my story of walking into the auto place energy, and then my energy of going into one of my favorite things to do, which is convenience stores, and the energy I get there of, hey, welcome in. Oh, it's like cheers. But
a specific convenience store? Anyone?
Okay.
Any particular?
Wawa. Okay. But it's important in our family life, in our personal life, in a party. This is a big one for parents because mom and dad hold the temperature of a home. And, I think about my kids in the mornings. It's crazy and chaotic to get 6 people out the door and where they need to be on time and dogs fed. It's a lot for people. And as a parent, if we wake up with that energy that's irritated and cranky, and children who might be over, we're the parents, they're going to follow our energy. Our energy also impacts them all day long. And for me, that's been a big kind of accountability, because I don't want to send my kid off with them feeling like I hate that. Because as a kid, I remember my mom was mad at me this morning. Mm-hmm. They carry that. And so what is the energy is just so important, I think, just in personal relationships. So personal relationships and our personal relationship at work.
And also, what energy do you want the culture to have? Because that whole one bad apple.
That's right.
Like if you get that negative naysayer person who we're all glad they worked from home that day, that should be a sign.
Good indication
about what do we want the energy to be. And that means that needs to be addressed.
That's right.
And it needs to be addressed. Typically we go to the nicest person in the room and ask them to placate the snarliest person in the room instead of addressing the snarl.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to end it here, but I want to leave everybody with a book that I'm particularly fond of. Marley Adams has written a book, Change Your Questions, Change Your Life, 10 Powerful Tools for Life and Work. And I think we have one more that we found, Leading with Questions. And this is by Michael Marquette. It's how leaders find solutions by knowing what to ask. I just think that's such an important practice, is to learn to ask the right questions to move us forward and to bring clarity. I think that's going to conclude us today on the Healthy Hurried Human podcast.
Great. Thanks for the insight.
The Healthy Hurried Human podcast is presented by Foxygen Consulting. At Foxygen, we provide business and performance psychology and consulting. We believe healthier people make a healthier workplace. Foxygen Consulting, breathing new life into your organization.